And then my next note is, why is Kupka even trying to pick up a fork with metal hands?
I know, it's like... he's so mad. It's hilarious.
He's like all frustrated. It's like, dude, what did you think?
Well, I was wondering. I was like, who was this guy that picked him up and carried him away? Is it somebody who could literally regrow hands, or is there a mechanical function? Like, no, they're just rocks.
I know.
They're just stone.
It's just metal hands. There's
metal.
There's no, yeah, like you're saying,
there's
any
no
kind
dexterity.
of mechanic inside that bends them, or anything, and he's just literally smashing a table, hoping a fork will go into the hand. Like, welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name's Kason.
This is Final Fantasy 16, and we left off after the first fight with Hugo Kupka. His hands got cut off.
Yep.
There's brilliant deduction skills by Vivian Ninetails about how they took him back.
Yeah, they wouldn't have sailed around. They would have gone through the desert, right?
Yeah, it was really, really, really astute observations by her.
Yes, very much so.
And so my next note here was that I can't be the only one who was confused by this character Mid.
Yeah.
Who seemed to suddenly appear in the story. Now, I expressed this on Twitter, and I was pretty surprised by like the strength at which people came back at me for this sentiment. I was just like genuinely like, wait, did I miss something? Who is this character?
Yeah.
Where did she come from? And people were like, oh, I bet you aren't doing the side quest. Tell me you're not doing the side quest without, tell me you're not. Anyway, everyone just like started being like really like condescending about it. And I was like, dude, I just asked, what did I miss? That's it. So apparently there's a side quest. Well, I've done all the side quests, which is why I was so confused. I don't know if you did this one. It was, you go try to retrieve a letter to Sid, back at the old hideaway, and you go and you find this dog that was like carrying it in its mouth. And they don't even say her name though. They don't say the name of the character, but the NPC does mention at the end of the quest line that he has a daughter. And then Clive is like, oh, he didn't mention that he has a daughter or whatever.
Sid has a daughter?
Yeah. But did you do that side quest?
I don't. I probably did do it, but I don't actually recall that either. I wasn't like totally surprised. I was surprised. I was like, oh wow, very interesting. But yeah, I found it interesting that we didn't meet her before.
Yeah. So I was just like, okay, this seemed really abrupt. This character, it would have been interesting to have at least had that mentioned in a not optional side quest beforehand. But Mid is Sid's daughter. She was studying at Canver, one of what they call the capital of the Free Cities.
Yeah, that's right.
And she's returned here, wants to set up shop and start working on a project here. This is going to lead to a bunch of smaller quests, which I think we'll probably have time to get into today. But she wants to build essentially like a ship with these like rocket-like engines.
Once again, another awesome hint at an airship.
Yeah.
That is...
This probably won't be an airship.
Played
it'll
past
be
this.
a sailing ship with rocket engines on it.
Yeah. We'll see, but I want to ride a ship. There have been so many hints, and at the point that I've played to, we still can't play or sail any ships.
Not quite yet. You got all the way up through Bahamut, right?
I did.
That's about where I stopped too. So
yeah.
Okay, so she's getting set up there. I wrote here, we have a cutaway to the Crystalline Dominion. There's a scene here with Dion and the Emperor. So essentially what a lot of these like advisors are saying is that the Dalmatian government is suing for peace after Kupka's been wounded, right? So like they don't have Titan to use even as like a what would you call it? A feint or like your
preventative.
Yeah. Well, you could just not. If it's known to the Empire that Hugo is not going to show up, so therefore they can't even use that as like a strategic feint, like that we could bring Titan out. So they're basically in a position where if Bahamut were to emerge, they would just be slaughtered. So they're basically trying to make a peace treaty now, and they're trying to decide how they should respond to that. So some of the dialogue here: if they're willing to accept their fault in the matter, I see no reason to refuse them. Still, we must insist on substantial reparations. Twin-side stores are not as bottomless as reported. This is something I was referring to earlier, where when the Dalmatians were sort of deciding how they should, continue their siege, they kept saying, we can't outlast them. Their stores are bottomless. Like, we can't, but apparently that's not the case. I think if they had just held out a little longer, and that's always the risk involved with sieges. You don't know. Yeah. You just don't know how long how long you can last.
Right, exactly.
So you're kind of left, having to guess or just try to keep your guys motivated despite the illness and the starvation and all of this that's happening. Yeah. So they're all discussing that, we should have them empty their treasuries for us. Of course, none of this would have been possible without your timely intervention, Prince Olivier. Or Olivier.
Olivier.
Indeed,
what the heck?
I don't know what that means.
Does that mean Olivia did something?
I don't know. Well, part of me thinks that this is just based on what we see later. It's just, I don't know if he actually did anything or if they're just setting up for Prince Olivier to take the throne.
Right.
It's like clear that that's where the Emperor is going with what he's doing, and so they're just trying to
heap praises upon him.
Yeah, even though he doesn't necessarily deserve it.
Okay. Gotcha.
I don't know, because maybe there's something written in the ATO
because we still have not heard him say a word at this point. Olivia hasn't said a word.
I don't think so. I don't think so. He's basically just been almost just absent. He's just there, but his mind isn't. It almost feels like he just kind of sits there on his mom's lap and doesn't say or do anything.
Yeah.
So, anyway, he says, I doubt any of us would have had the courage to trade words with the mighty Titan, nor less the wit to win him over. I think what they're referring to is the fact that Annabella went to Dalmicia with Prince Olivier, right, and made that deal with Kupka.
Okay.
Maybe she came back reporting that Olivier had basically solved this problem, and they all bought that, even though it was her, the one that was doing it. Right? That's what makes sense to me. So the Emperor basically proposes in this scene that they pretend to take the offer from the Dalmatians, take all the gold for the reparations, then send Bahamut out to kill them anyways as their armies retreat.
Yeah, that's pretty.
And this sets
pretty ruthless.
That sets Dion off a little bit.
Yeah.
So the advisors are fearing that Titan would come out to meet Bahamut, but the Emperor says no. He's busy engaged on the Western Front. Dion expresses his concern about this and how the people would suffer if the two of them were to fight.
Yeah. It's funny because the prince isn't very happy with the Emperor, but the Emperor doesn't seem very happy with the prince.
Nope.
It's very strange. This is a weird tension that you wouldn't expect, I don't think.
Yep. It's Annabella in the background pulling the strings.
Once again, she is she's
doing
very
her
powerful.
thing. There will be losses, it is true, yet for every citizen who falls, another can be bred. For every home that burns, another can be built. The Empire will live on. I love how later on Dion uses those words to tell him these are the words of a tyrant.
Yeah,
he says,
they're
the words of a god.
Those are the words of Griga.
Yeah. Before he leaves, he gives this kind of long glare to Annabella. May Griga forgive you, he says, of
as
his
he's walking
father,
away.
as he's walking out.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is where I have the note of the mural on the wall, and I even got a little screenshot of it here. But it's crazy. It's
It's
really
awesome.
cool. It's
It's
straight up
really, really cool.
Renaissance artwork. Very nice. You have Goddess Grieger arrayed in white with her hair flowing, holding a black spear and riding a dragon. And you notice that on top of all of the mountains, not all the mountains, all the buildings in the Emperor, kind of their capital, they have those huge, huge spires going up, pointing upwards, right? Like a steeple, but like 30 times longer, right?
Yes.
Like all the way up. And that's the weapon of the Goddess Grieger, is a spear. The people, there's a bunch of people around her. They're all looking at her as they are also themselves wrapped in heavenly clouds. It has a distinct Baroque feel to the artwork, almost like the Sistine Chapel or the Glory of Saint Ignatius, that one. It feels like Grieger is descending to the earth on top of the dragon. Also, it seems to me at the very bottom of the mural, you can see a few people sitting down in chairs, and it seems to me that this mural was specifically painted with the express intent of being behind the thrones, because when you then have the emperor and the empress and then the prince all sitting down on the thrones, it seems like they're part of this mural.
Yeah.
It seems like this is like the powers above them, right, that are descending upon them, the emperor himself, and then the people who are in charge. And that they're meant to be part of the art of this image. It's really cool.
It's awesome.
So
yeah,
I absolutely loved it.
As I don't know, just like a piece of art that exists diegetically in the world. It's really cool, and it's massive too.
Oh, it's huge, and I wonder who made this.
Painted
Like
that,
it looks like an actual painting. Like somebody at Square or
painted
somewhere
it.
else actually painted this, and they did a really good job. I want to know who did that.
Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, so then we have Clive and Uncle Byron going off to the desert. They're told
did we
by-
mention this one? The astrologers are
yes.
telling the emperor that the stars are in agreement. The shadow of treachery hangs over Prince Dion.
Yep.
And then, so Annabella's tales are true. So she's been whispering doubts into his ears and manipulating the emperor from the bedroom chamber or elsewhere, right, as she is wont to do. And it's crazy how good she is at this.
Yep.
Because often when somebody starts whispering and taking over, usurping power and kind of ruling from the shadows, not always, but sometimes people don't listen. Like for some reason, when she tells somebody to do something, she has tremendous sway. And she is able to get them to do exactly what she wants them to do. And she's made it very far on that. It must just be her natural charm or something. But yeah, that's crazy. And then the fact that the stars were in agreement that the shadow of treachery hangs over Prince Dion. I love this because it's technically true.
But it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is what's so funny about prophecies and things like that.
Right.
Is
if they're vague enough, or if there's two opposite ways they could be both fulfilled in opposite ways.
But in basically saying this to the emperor acts in a way that would get Dion to act treacherously.
True. Very
if
true.
the emperor, anyways, if he had not done what he had,
mean.
you know what I mean? So it's just funny the way
that's good. I like that.
That prophecies and things like that work out when people believe in them, right?
Right.
Okay, so I've got Byron and
that's it.
Clive going to the desert. So they're told by Otto to seek out somebody named Rosinia Dalimil, codename the Desert Hare, or I guess whatever her secret name is. This was a friend of Sid's in the past who used to help him. They used to work together, but they had lost contact over the years, so you're supposed to go there and find her. So they stop at an old trading post along the way. They go into this inn to get something to eat. This scene was actually really cool. I really liked the way that this was cinematically sort of executed, where you've got Joshua upstairs in a room.
Really close.
And you've got Clive and Byron down there, and then you have the whole conversation with the Waluders behind them. Yeah. And then a fight kind of starts there, and then Joshua escaping, but leaving another feather behind.
Right.
And Clive running upstairs at the end of this and seeing the carrots left over on the plate and knowing that Joshua had been there.
He barely missed it, yeah.
It's just a really good scene. I like
the way it all played out.
It's executed really well, kind of from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And it sort of passes point of view from one party to the other party. It's just like a really dynamic scene. I think it's done really well.
Yeah, I thought it was wonderful. Byron, though, he's just a little too
loud.
He doesn't know how to be discreet. Yeah,
No.
he's royal and he lets everyone know it, and he thinks that he has some. This happens a little bit later on as he's trying to make deals and work things out on his own. He's just trying to use his own clout to kind of like fix the problem, and he ends up making things worse often.
Yep.
Yeah, but it makes me like the character even more.
Yeah, he's got his charm to him.
Yeah, and he then says, as they say in the Republic, all roads lead to Drake's Fang. Like, ooh, that's convenient.
Yep.
Yeah, that's like the all roads lead to Rome idea.
Yep.
Also, though, Joshua's coughing up blood.
Yes.
At the end. Now, before he was coughing, but could you tell if he had been coughing up blood before? Okay.
He was coughing blood before.
Either way, he seems worse now than the last time.
He's getting worse, and this is due to his attempt to contain Ultima.
Yeah.
And it's just like taking its toll on him over time. It's getting worse. Yote, the companion he has with him, she's constantly concerned about it, and he keeps trying to no, we gotta keep moving, can't rest, can't stop, don't have time for that. Anyway, I don't have much in the way of notes on that scene other than I just thought it was good. I liked it quite a lot.
Yeah, it was very good. So then we go to find Rosina Dalimil, the Lady of Mystery.
They've got a gate closed that leads.
This becomes a theme in this game.
Yeah.
I've noticed the checkpoints and the papers, please, papers, please.
Yep.
So, anyways, we find out who this Rosina Dalimil lady is, and it's not a lady.
So
it's a dude.
Yeah, I found this out later. I went and talked to him during the course of a side quest a little bit later in the game. And I don't know why they don't mention this now in the scene, part of the main quest. But if you go talk to him later, he'll say that he basically inherited the name Desert Hair and Rosina Dalimil from his mentor. So
nice.
The way that Clive did with Cid. So
cool.
Clive became Cid.
So that's a thing.
And this guy Lubor became
the Desert Hair.
Took her name, her actual name.
Interesting.
Rosina Dalimil.
So I thought, I didn't realize that. I thought that he had merely adopted, what would you call it? Just as part of his disguise, right?
Yes.
That nobody would expect it would be him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But no, he was the actual. He was the I guess the protege of Rosina Dalimil, the same way that Clive was of Cid. So it was actually his predecessor that was the real Rosina Dalimil that worked with Cid.
Okay, that makes sense.
He's now the one who sort of inherited her role in the city.
I see.
So anyway, wish that they had said that in the scene itself, but
that would have been nice because he's not exactly as excited to help us.
No,
we have to do a lot of stuff for him first.
So the situation here in Dalimil is that all of the crystals that are portioned for the citizens, they're being stolen by a group of bandits, but they're not really bandits. They're soldiers of Waloed.
Yeah. And then they're reselling them at black market prices. Yeah.
Right. And so the idea is investigate this and find out what's going on. You find out, you reveal the plot, and the crystals are retaken and given back to the people. And that's more or less the quest, the idea of which is to gain the trust of Lubor so that he will help you. I think I wrote down some of his dialogue here. Tell me, what do you think a merchant's most important commodity? Why? It's trust. Everyone knows that. Without it,
that is true.
You have nothing, and nothing is exactly what you have. And so for you, I too have nothing. So you have to gain my trust before I would help you. I'm not just going to do that for no reason because you claim to be Cid. So this is the quest that you have to do in order to gain that trust. I thought as a sort of plot point and as a quest, it was fine. It was interesting. There was just a part of me, because I had just come off the back of playing Final Fantasy XIV, groaned a little bit. I think if I had not played that first, it wouldn't have been an issue. And it's not an issue. I'm not saying it is an issue. But Basically, the entire second half of Final Fantasy XIV is you going from place to place and the people saying, I don't trust you. Go run errands for me for 5 hours. Then I'll help you with the next thing.
See, okay.
And then you finish that and you go to the next place. I don't trust you. Go do a bunch of errands for me. So I thought that's what this was going to be.
Yeah.
But I actually didn't think it ran on too long. And
No, I don't think so.
the actual story there was kind of interesting, and it worked. This is the right way, I feel like, of going about this sort of gain my trust quest, more so than a lot of the FF14 A Realm Reborn quests, as far as the way they were structured. But
nice, gotcha.
Okay,
so we
let's see here.
kill all the guards, get the crystals, and then we finally get to see Drake's Fang. It looks really sweet. It looks really cool.
It's awesome.
And this is where my note is that I mentioned last time. Byron is not long for this world. I just don't think so. I like him too much. He's too charming, but he's too careless. He's too. There's a lot I could say about him, but they're endearing me to him too much that it is not meant to last, I don't think.
Yeah. There's some good dialogue between Byron and Clive as they separate. As Clive's going to head to the Fang, and Byron's going to continue on to Canver. So he says, I retreated. He's basically apologizing for having done nothing after Rosaria fell and his brother was killed and all this stuff.
Right, he just kind of laid low.
He says, I retreated to my counting house and danced attendance upon the vicereine in hope it would bring me favor. That was her title that I was trying to think of that other time.
Oh, that's right.
Vicereine. Annabella's title. I betrayed my nation to save my skin like the coward I am, and I am sorry. It's not too late, Clive. Rosaria is yours by right, and there are those who would help you take it back. Had I the courage of my brother, I might already have done so, but that ship has sailed. You, however, he's like, no, forgive me, I cannot. I fight to build a new world now, a better world where men can live and die on their own terms. So this is basically, Clive is not interested in being a ruler. He's interested in bringing everyone onto an equal playing field, equality.
Which you can do better from the shadows, influencing things secretly than you could as a king, trying to be overtly tell people what to do.
Sure. Yeah. So if you would see me following, or you would see me following his footsteps.
I guess that's another thing. Byron has some atoning to do.
Sure. Oh, that's why.
Just another reason why he's just not.
I see.
At some point, and when he dies, it's gonna be like, oh, I let so many bad things happen that this is how it has to be.
Right.
Because there is no forgiveness. Remember.
Yeah, you would see me following his footsteps. He's talking about Clive's talking about his father. And that's exactly what I mean to do, not by ruling Rosaria, but by extending his ideals to the whole of the twins. Though every soul in the realm may judge my actions heresy, I am certain my cause is just. Then my next note is, why is Kupka even trying to pick up a fork with metal hands?
I know, it's like... he's so mad. It's hilarious.
He's like all frustrated. It's like, dude, what did you think?
Well, I was wondering. I was like, who was this guy that picked him up and carried him away? Is it somebody who could literally regrow hands, or is there a mechanical function? Like, no, they're just rocks.
I know.
They're just stone.
It's just metal hands. There's
metal.
No, there's no, like you're saying,
there's
any
no
kind
dexterity.
of mechanic inside that bends them or anything, and he's just literally smashing a table hoping a fork will go into the hand. Like, what?
No,
what are you doing,
He's
dude?
probably in denial. He's, poor Kupka.
I get it. I know that that's what he's supposed to be feeling, but you could do that by having him look at his hand and look at the fork and look at his hand and just smash the table.
Sure.
Not like
trying
physically
to pick it up.
actually making an honest attempt to pick up a fork with a plate of steel.
Yeah.
It's just it's so dumb.
But so he gets super mad. So this is where we learned that Harbord is the one who saved Kupka.
Yes.
And we don't, who's Harbord? So they veiled this person, so we didn't know who it was, and it turns out we don't know who it is. It's just, he's just now being introduced here.
Yeah. He was in that scene really early in the game.
Oh, was he?
Where Waloed and the Republic were like meeting as the battle was
Oh,
happening.
that!
Yeah,
At the very beginning?
He was there.
Oh, shoot.
He's the one who...
Interesting.
They're like, whoa, the King of Waloed, why won't you, like, help us? And they turn to him, and he just sort of... King of Waloed just sort of... like, he doesn't really say anything. And then
he says, you have your answer.
Yeah, that you have the king's answer.
That was him.
That was Harbor.
I did not recognize him at all. Wow.
He is the, like, Lord Commander of the Waloed army, basically.
Okay. And it seems like Ultima is exchanging words with Harbor.
Yes.
As we see later on. So
Yes.
Ultima is manipulating a lot of stuff.
Because
both
Kupka's
sides.
losing it here.
Yes.
And Harbor mocks him.
Yeah.
And he runs after me, like trips him, and he keeps demonstrating how weak he is.
Yeah.
And then he basically plants a seed here, like, you know, I think he says something about drinking from the heart, the ether from the heart of the mother crystal
to gain power beyond understanding.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And that this is exactly what Benedicta did. So this helped explain something I had a question about earlier, because I was like, wait a minute. It seemed like Clive took Garuda from her, and she was not able to summon it anymore. Her power was gone, and she was like losing it about that, right? She was freaking out. But then all of a sudden, she seemed to be able to do it. And I was like, well, is that just like in desperation? No. She had apparently
ingested
a bunch of ether from the mother crystal, and that gave her the strength to do it. Now he's basically pushing Kupka to go do the same thing. And his
because it turned out so well for Benedicta.
I know, right?
It's like, hey, this is what Benedicta did, and then she died. You should do it too. And he's like, yes, I shall do it. And then he, same thing.
Yeah. So his house is basically like inside the Fang.
Yeah, he built it like in the crystal.
Yeah,
That's
he like
cool.
lives inside of there, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So he sends him off to go drink the ether and become Titan.
Yep.
And then Harbord is he's clearly leading him on, but then he, like you said, he turns like Mythos is here. Yeah. Very well, it shall be so. And there's just these like Ultima thralls type enemies behind him. So yeah, he's everybody in Waloed seems to be on board with Ultima here.
And then people in the Empire, the Sanbreque Empire, they don't even know who Ultima is. So it's like, it's crazy.
On. Yeah. Okay, so then I wrote there are orcs inside of Drake's Fang. So orcs, it was mentioned earlier by the King of Waloed, were like a problem for the Walooders. So they're the Beastman tribe of what is their Ash? Ash is the name of their continent.
Yeah. On the right one, the east one.
In the north, like in Rosaria, it was the goblins, and
that's
so
right.
this is the orcs of the Beastman tribe from Ash, and they had been having problems with them, like encroaching on their land. But now orcs are inside of Drake's Fang, and so I think Clive is like, wait, are the orcs part of the Walooder army now? How did that happen? So apparently, somehow, the King of Waloed has got orcs working for him, which is interesting. Let's see.
And then Kupka starts to like hallucinate. He sees Benedicta.
Yes.
He goes over. He drinks the. It's crazy. My note here. This might be a little bit later. What the heck, man? I hate the way I take notes. I'm so bad at this. Okay, so the hooded guy shows up again right after this. So Kupka's hallucinating, and then I just typed Ifrit with an exclamation point, and then I said, okay. So here's the hooded guy.
Yes.
Is this the shadow guy, or is this Joshua, or is this another person?
This is Ultima taking the form of Benedicta getting bitten by Clive. So, like, it shows Clive revealed as the cloaked dude, and he, like, bites the neck of Benedicta.
In front of Kupka, right?
Yeah, but then he, like, turns into Ifrit after that. So it's all this abstract, hallucinatory
And it's all from Kupka's perspective.
Yes, that's what Kupka's seeing. And so Clive is looking on it, and there's nothing there. So he's like, what's wrong with him?
That's right.
Like, what is going on? What is wrong with him? Who is he even talking to?
Yeah.
And so this is Ultima goading him on. by showing him Benedicta, who he loved, and then showing Benedicta being killed by Clive and Ifrit. So
then Kupka just eats Crystal. He just like takes a bunch and he just like eats him. He just like takes a bite. I don't know why more people don't do this, or would you probably die if you're a normal person and you just ate a crystal?
I have no idea. Well, actually, yes, you would, because remember when they were in Drake's head, they were talking about the ether floods.
Yeah.
And they were saying
and it messes people up.
They won't bother us, but like all the soldiers and all the normal people, the miners that were in there got turned Akashic or whatever.
So if a normal person eats a crystal, they become like a monster.
Yeah.
They turn into...
The abundance of ether would, jack.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
But for the dominance, the ether floods are not an issue. Right?
Okay.
It basically would just give them more power to do their priming. Okay, so it fuels his rage. He begins to prime. Clive's like, oh crap, he's priming.
He tried to kill him before he primed.
Yes, but he was too late.
Too late.
So he starts getting that sharp headache again.
Yep.
He calms himself this time, though. So usually he just starts screaming and going crazy, oh, it's so painful. But he just sort of he takes a step back, and he's able to actually, on command this time, call Ifrit and summon him and prime when he wants to do it. And then we see that hooded man watching this from afar with a flame kind of burning his hand. It's almost like he's doing a gesture as if he's sort of... It indicated to me, or it seemed, that he was sort of making it happen, casting some kind of spell.
So he's orchestrating, right?
But the fact that he's able to actually embody Ifrit was at least aided in part by Ultima. They're kind of watching this in the distance.
That's good.
Right?
That's good. That's good.
So he's trying to prepare Mythos, right, to actually be his perfect vessel or whatever. And this is all his doing, making that happen. So the battling against the other icons is all part of that process.
Right.
And I would assume
him absorbing
the blessings or the powers.
Yeah.
Them, right.
The cinematography gets really good here.
Yeah.
There's some really cool shots because Titan is just massive.
Yes. Because, they're in whatever, that small chamber area where the heart of the crystal is, and he just bursts out of it as the giant Titan. Yeah. And I really liked particularly this first phase of the fight.
Yeah.
Where it's I know, Ifrit had been more mobile in the last battle against Typhon.
But not like this.
But this is where I feel like it's kind of finally totally opened up as far as...
you can dodge. There's so much you can do now, and the mobility seems a lot more enhanced.
Yeah, I really liked this first phase of the boss fight, underground against Titan.
Yeah.
It felt really huge. I really felt like I was in control of the icon fully for the first time in the game. The music was really, really cool.
The music, dude, and the music just keeps building up. It's this repetitive track. It's different. It's different from every other song in the entire game. It's got this drum track to it too, and then it builds up to this it's just crazy. It was the most intense. It's a type of music that I don't feel like I've ever heard before.
Yeah. Even
though it uses elements of things that I've definitely heard before, and it was just the right choice for this battle. Yeah. Even though it's different from everything else that we've heard, it was the right thing to do here. It was really, really cool.
Yeah.
Also, Ifrit looks tiny. We know how
really
big
small.
Ifrit is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But when we're fighting Titan, it's and this probably lends to the whole mobility aspect, but it's we seem like just a little
really
dude
small,
attacking this huge giant.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. I loved it.
It's a really cool
just
way
the
of selling scale.
The scale of this battle is just massive.
Yeah, and it gets even crazier because after the first phase, you then go back up to the surface and Titan is even bigger. Cause
I know, he's massive.
I think this is where he
eats the crystals.
Consumes the crystal.
There you go, yeah.
And just explodes in size, right?
It enhances his one power, which is bigness. So now he's extra, even bigger. And then you get these bands. You're kind of trying to like surf, like on the like Tarzan surf on the vines and stuff.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Actually, yeah. This phase of the fight, the second phase, has a lot more like quick time events.
Yeah, and
that
jumping
sort of
from
thing.
one thing to the other. Yeah.
And that's the way that they, I think, get around the fact that it would just be really hard or
Otherwise.
a lot of limitations to trying. How would we actually, in full control, get the player to get up there? Anyway,
now
it's
I
fine
didn't
for the
mind
most
these
part,
so
but-
much for what it is because the epic nature of what was happening was pretty mind blowing.
Yeah, it's huge.
this fight was really cool. In fact, this icon fight sold me on icon fights in general. I'm like, okay, I bet you. I wonder if they developed something like this first to pitch of this is how the icon fights are going to be. Yeah. And it was like, oh, based on that, yes, absolutely, make a bunch of icon fights. And this one, just the scale is so big. It's so epic. Everything about it was so cool that I think this one fight alone justifies all of the icon battles in the entire game.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
It was really cool. It was really fun.
Yeah, and I mean, you get to the end of this phase, and I thought for sure it would be over at that point because it's a long fight.
Yeah.
But then it's like there's a whole third phase where they're like falling through the earth and just like continue to fight.
Oh, I love that too. When it's like you what is that? Ifrit ends up getting these like rock like gloves basically.
Yes, and they just punch each other.
And then Titan, and then they're both just like oh man.
Oh my goodness.
It's so funny. It was so good though. It was just so cool. It was because the power level kept upping and upping and one-upping and overdoing itself. And my thought by the end of this was like, that was a roller coaster.
Yeah.
That was really fun. And that should have been the demo, I think.
The Titan battle?
I don't know. It probably wouldn't have given people the best idea of what this game is. But that was so exciting. I just couldn't believe it. It was wonderful.
Yep. And you finally finish off Hugo Kupka, which was it's just a big, like, sense of relief after what he had done to the old hideout and, like, all the pain he had caused for all the people there. This is a big, like, weight off their shoulders to be able to go back and tell them this. So the next phase of the game is basically kind of a big sort of rest from that, like, as you go and do errands for mid, and you go and you talk to Otto and other people, and the game really slows down after this moment to give you a moment to breathe and just be relieved that that's finally over.
Which is good from a narrative sense as well, because that is how the people here feel as well. As you go around and talk to people within the hideout, they're all just like, oh, really? Kupka's dead?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like, I think it was Karen. Karen says, like, you mean I can stop looking over my shoulder every 10 minutes? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, oh my gosh. They've been so afraid of him. He was one of the few people that they all feared could just put an end to them at any moment.
Yes.
Because I'm sure that when he showed up at the hideout, they had like no warning.
Yep.
He would have just, because it'd take him like 12 steps and he's there, right? And it's just like boom. And then the way he was pounding the hideout before was like they had no warning. And so the PTSD from that event would just carry through for the rest of your life, I guess.
Yes.
But everybody is, and I really like that. So the character gets to feel that, the player gets to feel that, as well as the narrative story kind of, puts it at that level as well.
Yeah.
But before this happened,
you got another scene with the Waluders watching from the cliffside up top.
There's the line. I think this is from Ultima. And Ultima's, of course, just trying. He keeps trying to merge with us, right?
Yes.
And it's just not.
Yeah, before we cut up to Harbord and King of Walud on the top, there's like a moment where Clive is almost taken and back into the Ultima world. And he's like facing off with Ultima. Yeah, go ahead.
And then Joshua, of course, comes up again.
Yeah.
But before that, this Ultima is just like, really, like, what's wrong with you? Like, just let us become one. Like, what are you doing? He says, human will is so insubstantial, it cannot exist in isolation. You mitigate its weakness by interweaving it with your consciousness. We first have to sever every thread of consciousness.
Yep.
And this is so interesting. What he's saying is that the human will only exists. The human will is so weak that it only can exist by being interwoven with consciousness. And this is one of the interesting things about Clive becoming Ifrit and dealing with his shadow and dealing with maybe the more unconscious like processes of him, or especially when he first becomes Ifrit at the beginning, and he's like his consciousness is somewhere else, and then his body is doing stuff that he doesn't want it to do, but his consciousness had to be like separated, but that so that then just the pure will could come out, right? And that I think that's what Ultima's talking about. He's like, you have to. He needs to sever the thread of consciousness, so that way just the raw will of the will to power, right?
Yeah.
Can manifest without this consciousness, which is always connected to other people and sympathetic and wants to suppress like emotions and all that. He's saying we got to get rid of the conscious mind. And that way the pure, raw, unconscious will, which is basically just like the id, can come forth, and the self-interested like will to power is all that Ultima cares about. And he's like so confused that Clive is resisting him at all. He's like, I can give you like unlimited power. Why do you not want it? And Clive is like, because I have like ethics and all this stuff. Ultima's like, what are you talking about? You mean your consciousness is so intertwined and your will is so weak that, okay, then I'll just fix that, I guess. Like he sees it as a problem to fix instead of like a meaningful situation within a social group of animals, of people.
Yeah.
So anyways, I thought that was really good.
You will accept us, Mythos.
There's
a lot of people in our live chat who have been commenting on the game's pronunciation of the word mythos, that mythos. It's kind of like this strange mythos sort of pronunciation, but that's why that's what he's calling.
There's probably a reason for that.
I don't know why. You were created for this purpose, and you shall serve it. And then that's when Joshua comes in. Fight it, Clive. Don't let him in. Yep. And he says, consciousness, we see now all that stuff he said. Human will is so unsubstantial, it cannot exist in isolation. But when you come back from that little meeting with Ultima, he's got the Phoenix
another feather
in his hand again, right?
Keeps happening, yep.
So Joshua sort of pulled him back.
He did, but then he was gone again.
Yep.
He is very elusive.
Yep. But I think this is because, and the reason I think Joshua was able to speak to him there is because Ultima is currently imprisoned inside of Joshua. So if Ultima was able to, it seems, almost pull Clive's consciousness into where he is, which is inside of Joshua, and Joshua noticed, wait a minute, Clive's here. Hey, fight it. Don't let him do that. And so he was actually there and then was able to send his consciousness back out, is the way I sort of interpreted what happened.
Very interesting.
Okay, so now we have Harvard.
Now we have the people up, on the ledge.
Up on the cliff.
For 5 years, that man lived only for revenge, clinging fast to a fiction, even as it swept him into the abyss. One cannot change one's own nature through force of will alone. Once again, the will is weak. Yeah, only the Almighty can do that. Right, and this is, once again, this harkens to the conversation of the essence and things like that. Right, you can't, but the idea is that you cannot change your nature just through like willing it.
Yes.
Right? In part because of what Ultima said. The will is too weak to just be able to do things like that, right? And then only the Almighty can change your fate or change your nature, right?
Yeah. I liked Harvard's line. One can no more command the power of ether by drowning in its flood than one can constrain the tides by standing in the sea.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, so obviously the Waluders are on the side of Ultima. They're working for him.
Yep.
And then I liked the King's line as well. Oh, that the death of a mother crystal should be so beautiful. And it sort of showed that shot of the
I wondered about that.
Shatter.
Yeah, the crystal shatters, and he says, oh, that it should be so beautiful. Does he want... They don't want the crystals to be disintegrated, though, right? Because this almost sounded like a woe, like, oh, it's sad that we're losing it, but it's beautiful. Or is he happy that they're losing it and it's beautiful? I don't know. I couldn't tell. I think get a read
that
on
the Waluders who were in with Ultima are aware of the destruction of the crystals being part of the plan.
And they're okay with it.
Yeah. But I don't know why. Maybe they have to go mythos in to destroy theirs as well, because theirs is the last one standing.
Well, that's how I would do it too, right? Well, if you think of this in terms of like a power, something that maximizes your power, that helps you to gain advantage over others, but also something that's bad for the world, this is the problem of denuclearization, right? you give up yours first. I'll be the I'll give up mine after you give up yours, right?
Yours,
so it's like, okay, if we're gonna puppeteer Clive into destroying all these crystals, destroy all of theirs first.
Yeah, then ours.
Then you can have our whatever.
Yeah,
if it must be, it must be. But don't destroy ours first, because then we're screwed in the interim, right?
We have, let's see, we have Tough Ham here saying, I feel that Barnabas has this Spanish conquistador type of aesthetic.
Ooh.
The belts, the frilly shirt, he gives off Zorro vibes.
Zorro.
A little bit of the accent, too. Feels a little bit
yeah.
more Spanish-inspired for the Waluters than
Okay, interesting.
like some of the other places. But
very cool.
let's see here. This is where we cut to that potion
Dion,
girl.
right? Oh, the potion girl. Nice.
And then being shoved aside by the
That's right.
guy that we talked about last time.
Yeah, he's gonna smack her too.
Yeah, and then we're with Dion and Terrence. So they're in a relationship together. Terrence, I would guess, is his like second in command in the Dragoons, and he's begging him not to summon Bahamut again unless it's absolutely necessary. And Dion says the Empire agreed to an armistice with the Republic, and yet the Emperor still plots its ruin. For now, the Dalmecs suspect nothing, and as long as I can hold their gaze, war need not be inevitable. So he's trying to not or hold off on doing what the Emperor wants him to do.
As long as he can.
He's trying not to do that.
And I remember what the Emperor had said to him before was something like, "Oh, our people need you," or rather, "Our people need Bahamut."
Yeah, right.
So he is merely the presence of his, like he's not himself. He is the power that he wields.
Yeah.
He is not like a person.
Particularly to Annabella and
Yes.
and now the Emperor,
but in some ways he's proud of the role that he plays. He embraces it to some extent, and he says he has this line here: "When the Sembrechians look to the heavens, the sight of Bahamut gives them hope."
Yeah.
Right. So he knows that he can't just like he can't run away. He can't avoid his responsibility. He can't do much. He just has to play his role, and his role is be Bahamut. And he recognizes that there is something that inspires his people in him, just like being that. Even though it's I'm more than just Bahamut. My dad thinks I'm just Bahamut, right?
Yeah,
it's like there's this problem here. But he also recognizes like the importance of him playing that role. So he's just got this big conflict here. He wants to be Bahamut to give his people hope, but he doesn't want to be Bahamut to actually do the weapon stuff, to actually kill and fight in war.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because he's got really good control over Bahamut.
Yes.
He is extremely powerful, and we saw that in the Odin battle. It was Odin, right? Before?
Yeah. Odin and Bahamut.
He suffers very little negative consequence from becoming an icon.
in comparison
to basically everyone else.
Yeah.
Very good.
Which would lead me to believe he seems younger.
Yeah.
Basically any of the other Titan or the other icons we've seen, maybe except Joshua. Maybe he and Joshua are a similar age.
That's true because Joshua, we'll get to this later, but they, had met each other before.
Right.
And they seemed to be when they were children.
Yeah. So it leads me to believe maybe he awakened the most recently of all the current
Sure, but he's
icons.
also so powerful, though. I don't know.
Yeah, but maybe that's why it's not affecting him yet. He just hasn't used the power of Bahamut long enough.
That makes sense. That would make sense.
Yeah, anyway.
So then a messenger shows up and is like, "Hey, Olivier's the new emperor."
Yeah, this is...
I couldn't believe that when I saw that. I was like, wait, what? This little puppet kid, we have not heard him say a word. I did not see him becoming the emperor. That was not like on my bingo card, as you would say.
Yeah, because I wrote here, okay, forgive me, Terrence, would that you were my master, but alas, I'll always be your humble servant. Then there is at least one small mercy, I think Terrence says this, you shall not have to do battle with Titan. And then I loved the response from Dion, would that I could avoid doing battle at all.
There you go.
So this is the type of guy that he is, right? He's actually...
He wants to embrace his role, but at the same time, he also wants to change his fate, you could say.
Really like Dion as
Me too.
a character.
Great character.
I think he's a phenomenal character. He's probably my favorite character in the game so far.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
He's a freaking dope character. And then the messenger comes in and he just he's pissed. I know you. We stand in the presence of the Phoenix. I wrote because he's pissed and it's at this moment that Joshua
shows up.
Walks into the tent.
Yeah. Yep.
So he's I got to go back to. I think he tells them to prepare things so he can go back to the because he was commanded to stay where he's at, and he's like, "Nope, I'm going back."
Nope.
And that's when
Yeah, that was
Joshua
good.
walks in. Do I stand, or I know you? We stand in the presence of the Phoenix. I thought you long dead. Do I address a ghost?
That's good.
And then Joshua says, "Many have told me I look like one, but no, I am alive. Just barely alive." I love that little hint. It leads me to believe that hopefully soon, based on what we played up to, they're going to reveal how Joshua survived.
I know.
That night. It's like we've known he's alive, but for the longest time, I
What
just want to know
happened?
how. How are you alive? How is it even possible? Because there's a line that Clive says later at Sid's grave where he's like, "Not even the Phoenix can bring people back from the dead."
Yeah. Yes. That's
Yeah.
later. Yeah.
So he didn't die and then be reborn maybe the way that we thought.
Right. He just didn't die. Period.
I wonder if that's
Yeah.
it, or maybe they'll reveal something else. I don't know, but I'm really curious to know how he survived.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, but also, Joshua is talking to Yote as well, I think, around this time.
Yep.
And is saying, "Oh, I met him once. He's a good guy." But when he says, "I met him once," this would have been before he was killed as the Phoenix.
Yes,
We're talking when he was like 9. He met Dion, right? And it's
Yeah.
like it's been 20 years since he met Dion, but he still thinks that it's the same person that he had met 20
Yes,
years ago. And he's right. He's right.
hoping for that. Yeah.
Yes. Luckily, he's right, but I would never think that.
Yeah.
That, like, oh, I met somebody when I was 9, and I'll bet you they're
The
like
same person,
the same
today.
upstanding, heart. Now, in some ways, maybe you could assume that, but like life happens and people change.
Yeah. For
So Joshua sits down with Dion, and he says that he has a tale to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And then the screen cuts to black. I'm so pissed. I hate it.
I gotta wait
I hate that.
for that. This is
So now
where
we're back at the hideaway.
You're back at the hideaway. You do Mid's quests. Now, a lot of people have sort of shared their complaints about this set of quests or the pacing of this section, and I get where they're coming from.
Just because it's slow?
It's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of things you have to do.
It is, but if you're building a ship, dude, like,
Yeah.
I'm all for it. I've been waiting. They keep hinting at ships, and I'm waiting, and I'm like, hey, I will build the ship for you. Just let me have a ship
Yes.
so that I can... But there's something I wanted to bring up briefly, though, and maybe this would be better brought up later on when we actually can use the airship, if it ever happens. But in a game with fast travel, where you're just skipping around
Yeah.
everywhere, is an airship even like...
What's
the point?
You're bringing up a philosophy, a question of game design philosophy that
Yeah.
goes all the way back to the very first Final Fantasy game, the original game. So Dragon Quest, the first Dragon Quest game, had teleport magic, essentially what we would call fast travel today, right? And I think I've told the story before, but not for those who joined us recently for this podcast. The reason why they decided to do an airship vehicle or just different vehicle types in Final Fantasy instead was because they had designed this whole world with all these little secrets and things to find all around, right? Particularly in areas that are impossible to reach early on in the game because you don't have a way of going across the ocean and landing there
Right.
or whatever it might be, right? So the airship vehicle was used as a way for the player to move quickly between areas and avoid battles while doing so, while also being able to get a visual, like, gauge on the terrain that they have not yet seen.
Yeah.
Passing over something.
Like, whoa, I
and
haven't
going,
been there yet.
I haven't been there
Yeah.
yet. And that is used as an aid for exploration of all these areas and cool things that they hid in the world that they want you to see that you wouldn't if you just teleport over here, right? You just go from here to here. There's a whole traversal that doesn't take place where you don't get a lay of the land and
Right.
get a sense for what's around there. And, oh, I'm curious about that. So the airship vehicle, as far as its place in the annals of JRPG history, was the invention of Hironobu Sakaguchi in the first Final Fantasy game.
Yeah.
As much as that became something copied, particularly during the SNES and PlayStation era, by all of them, or at least something like it as far as vehicles, it was a huge part of encouraging exploration of the world. And so, when you're just kind of warping around to different places, you're just going from this map to this map to this map. And it's part of the reason why the Final Fantasy X, when they started really getting away from the overworld map sort of design concept, I felt like a lot of the sense of exploration that Final Fantasy once captured for me was sort of lost, because a lot of these maps were very linear. There's very few branching paths that you could actually, and that's not like a diss on Final Fantasy X. You can go watch our Final Fantasy X podcast. We love the game. It's a great game. But there is certainly a sense of exploration that had been part of the series' DNA from the beginning that was sort of lost there. And that was lost in Final Fantasy 13, I feel like. And in this game, I feel it too. I feel like a lot of the maps, some of them are much bigger and not quite just straight linear hallways, but a lot of them are.
Right.
A lot of them are very, very straightforward and linear, and there's just not a lot of exploration. The fact that you bring up that point, what is the point of an airship when you have teleport magic? Well, that would be typically what the point would be, but that's not the way that this game world is designed.
Right.
So
I'm getting all excited about an airship, and then it's like, well, but I don't even know what I'm going to use it. I don't even know what the point is. Now, I know FF10, FF12, like, there is an airship. It's just not an important... Like, it's important for the narrative, but it's not important for the game.
No.
Yeah.
You don't actually fly it in those games. It's similar.
What I'm,
you just
what I'm
pick
excited
points
for,
and warp there.
I'm excited for the potential of the past, of the nostalgia of FF8 or something.
Yeah.
And this game, it can't offer me that.
No.
It's not going to get... I'm going to be disappointed.
You're not going to get that in this game. No.
And, well, that's just unfortunate. But, that's something that I've had to think about. Like, I want an airship. Wait a second, why? What am I even going to do with it? I can fast travel wherever I want.
Right. So, I doubt that you'll get a controllable vehicle at any point in this game. Even though I know that Mid is building a ship.
She's building a ship. She's getting me excited, but I have to temper my expectations because it's not going to be what I want it to be.
I don't assume that you will actually get to sail on that little world.
It'll just be a couple cutscenes and yeah.
Anyway, but
so
I liked these quests because... I shared a little bit about feeling a little disappointed in the 5-year time skip and feeling like there were things happening in not in between there, but just like right after the destruction of the old hideout.
Right.
That I wanted to see. How did Otto and Tarja and some of these other people just accept Clive taking on literally Cid's name?
Right.
And since that happened, it's water on the bridge. It happened. They skipped that. I didn't get to see it. I did at least like that they give you the option here to go on quests with Otto and Tarja if you so choose. I don't know who you chose, because you can go with either Otto or Gav for the first part of it to collect the Stardust.
Yeah, that was fun. Who'd you pick?
I picked Otto.
Me too.
Okay, yeah, because I've been with Gav on quests before.
Many times.
So Otto, that seemed like really unique. Right?
And then for the other one, you went with Jill, right?
No, I went with Tarja.
No, I went with Jill.
Oh, okay,
because I thought it was going to be like a romantic thing. I thought that they were. I didn't know where they were going because there's FF7 and there's certain games where it's like, well, who you go with
an
could
affection
affect
system.
An affection system. Who you go with could affect. And I'm like, well, I don't know how they're presenting the game to me here. But if there's some hidden mechanic like that there, I would much rather point the game towards Jill than Talia.
Yeah. Yes.
Personally.
And I had a very similar thought while I was doing this. I was thinking, from the standpoint that I don't know this character, Tarja, I've had basically no real conversations with her before.
Other than her telling us, don't bother Jill, she's resting.
Yeah.
Like, that's our only interactions with Talia.
That's basically been it. So I was like, I want to get to know this character better.
Right.
But if I were actually Clive... and my girlfriend was standing in the same room, and they were like, "Do you want to go with this girl or with your girl?" And you picked. That's just a bad idea.
You pick Jill.
That's a very bad idea. Okay. I'm gonna go. You stay here, girlfriend. I'm gonna go with this girl
with this
instead.
Other similarly aged woman. Yeah.
Not smart.
No.
But I really. So it's good at least
we'll
get to compare the scenes because I'm not sure what he and Jill would have talked about. So
they just reminisced about the past, but
okay,
and made more promises for the future.
So Okay, let's start with the first one, though. So I picked Otto, and we went to an area near Dalimil, and you're collecting the black sand from there. It's called Stardust. This is something Blackthorn, the blacksmith, is going to use in building the parts for this, the metal for this engine or whatever. And Otto says, when we first met, I had you down as a spoilt little puppy who enjoyed nothing more than biting the hand that fed you. But 5 years on, you're the one doing the feeding, so thanks for proving me wrong.
That was good.
And Clive says, you weren't wrong, but I changed, thanks to Sid and thanks to you. When I suggested taking on his name, you were the first to back me, and if you hadn't, no one else would have. I couldn't have done any of this without you, Otto. I like this interaction. I think it's good. I think it's a nice sort of heartwarming sort of conversation. It leaves me wondering, why did Otto, if he had this view of Clive, decide to give him a chance? Like, when I just wish I could see that scene.
That's true.
Like,
they're talking about something.
Why did they accept Clive? Why?
Interesting.
Why? I would assume because
Sid.
I mean, he had made some strides since Otto would have first met him, where he was freaking out in the dungeon, like, kill me, or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's
but
right.
Like, I don't know. He wasn't there with Sid and Clive, and I guess it probably would have been that
point.
it probably would have been that Sid would have told Otto how he trusts him and sees something in him, and the fact that Sid went so far to try to help Clive get out of that rut, right? I think it's more of a trusting Sid in the fact that Sid saw potential in Clive than really even trusting in Clive necessarily.
Right.
Probably something like that. But it would have been nice
sense.
to have a scene where we get to see Otto's decision-making process there. Like, the whole thing, the whole hideout has been destroyed. Sid's dead. It's time to, go our own ways. And Clive trying to pull everyone together, and a lot of them being like, no, like, why would we follow you? And Otto being the one to step forward and say, I'm going to do it because this is what Sid would have wanted. I knew Sid, and Sid was preparing Clive for this. Something like that. I just feel like it would have been nice to have seen that scene happen. But this is good too.
So we got the Stardust.
Yes.
Now we got to collect this stuff called this pitch stuff. Okay, this is really cool. I actually like the way that Harpocrates is kind of introduced to all of this. Yeah. Because first we could talk to him. I talked to him once to talk about Ultima, where it's like, hey, have you learned anything about Ultima? And he's like, no, I still haven't, which I thought was really good, because I thought for sure he was going to be like, yes, I've learned since, here's it all in all these books. The fact that he comes back forward and says, no, there is nothing about anything like what you're talking about anywhere in all of the history books that I've read, any of them. That either means that this is a more recent phenomena, or this is something that operates like from the deep dark shadows. Harpocrates says that Ultima seems like a terrible force of nature beyond the ken of mortal men. So a god, in other words, right? Just like this force of nature that has power over what's happening here, right? But other than that he hasn't heard anything. That makes it way scarier. That makes it way more mysterious, right? That nobody has encountered this thing before. You're basically the first, except for now. And that's why it was a little, because you brought up to me now, the stuff with Waloed, that's something that wasn't in any of my notes, that Waloed seems to be well in the know with Ultima. Yeah. Maybe Harpocrates just doesn't have any books from Waloed. Sure. But they may have made contact a while ago. Some of them. Obviously, everybody wouldn't know, but some of the elite people over there may know about it. But according to this conversation with Harpocrates, we're like the only ones in the world who've ever seen Ultima.
Yep.
I thought that's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, you did a good job with that. And then
the ship, by the way, did you get the name?
Yes.
The Enterprise.
The Enterprise, which is
pretty good name.
Actually, the name of an older Final Fantasy airship from, I think, Final Fantasy III.
Oh, really?
Because there's a bunch of different airships you get in that game. Because there's the first one that gets destroyed, and then I think it's the Enterprise, and then there's the Dreadnought one. It's not called that, though. What's the big one? The one that lets you go over mountains. I can't remember the name of it right now. Anyway, there's several different vehicles, lots of different vehicles you get in FF3, but the Enterprise is one of them. You go on a mission for Mid where they're trying to collect some of the material, that mysterious material that all the fallen civilization built their stuff out of.
Okay, so that's what
With
the
what's,
moon.
what,
the
what's
moon
her
do.
name? No, that's before that.
Oh, okay.
There's
okay.
just a monster blocking the entrance. You
Oh,
go
and it's
kill
like
it.
the Mike Wazowski monster, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I was expecting something a lot worse.
The
'cause she-
Nautilus. Thank you, guys.
Oh, the Nautilus. Nice.
That was the name of the big ship in Final Fantasy.
So the girl, the woman, she was saying like, "Oh, there's a piece, all right, but don't go there. There's a horrible beast guarding it." And I'm like,
right.
It was just freaking Mike Wazowski.
Just Mike Wazowski. You kill him, and then they go in and get the stuff. Now you go
that was
back,
good.
you need the moon dew. And I liked,
Now this was really good.
I liked the world building they did with this, with Harpocrates again, describing
Yeah.
what it is. Because he's trying to think of, like, how can we coat these engines, or how can we keep them from overheating, basically. These materials are too heavy.
Right.
And so we need something light, but we don't know of a material that's light that would be able to stand the heat.
But that's wrong though, because she said that it runs on mithril. It's a mithril engine.
Oh, yeah.
And according to Bilbo Baggins, mithril is light as a feather, as hard as dragon scales, and can withstand great temperatures of heat. So, it's mithril. They have mithril.
have
Like,
it
just
already.
use it.
Yeah.
But I do like how this goes because Harpocrates, because I was thinking, okay, we'll just, legend tells of a metal. No, Harpocrates is like, hey, she's thinking about it wrong. She's going the wrong way. We need to rethink this. It doesn't have to be a substance that we're familiar. It doesn't have to be metal. Right,
Yeah.
she's thinking of, if only I had a metal that was had these qualities.
Right.
And he's saying, hey, in these books, there was some, and this is what they called moon dew. It was made, it was like a concoction of like multiple different things
Yeah.
that are now commonly found in the world, but once were highly sought after.
Mm-hmm.
This is a thing about, before, what was it, like 300 years ago, aluminum was considered more valuable than gold.
Oh, yeah.
Until like the mid 1800s, somebody found a way to and aluminum's become ubiquitous since then. But before like 200 years ago, it was really hard to get aluminum.
Yeah.
And so a lot of things that were made of a precious metal were made of aluminum. And then all of a sudden, after a couple hundred years and a few scientific discoveries later on, aluminum's like the most ubiquitous metal around, right? You kind of joke about it, that it's
Yeah.
like a tin can kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there was once where it was very precious. So this kind of thing happens, that once technology advances or regresses, once things change one way or the other, the materials that were once incredibly valuable become just thrown by the wayside. And so what was it? Chocobo food? Like there was like, it was like nuts, like I didn't write down the ingredients.
Yeah, there's some kind of nut you have to go pick up from the market.
But yeah, and I think, who is it? Jill comments. She's like, sounds like you're just asking us to get you food. Like, are you,
right.
you just want to like eat while you
Like
do
a
the real work?
grocery
Or
shopping list, yeah.
And he's like, no, once these were very difficult to gather.
But yeah, he says, before the dragoons tamed the worms and wyverns of the realm, nobles would dab their castle walls with this moon dew in order to guard against dragonfire.
Nice.
So they would put it on their armor, they would put it on the castle walls. They would, so this was a substance they used to basically defend themselves against the heat of the dragonfire.
Nice.
So if you coat your engines in this, it should have a similar effect and it should work. You don't have to worry about finding the right metal or material, right?
Yeah.
So I chose Tarja to go with me on this.
Crazy. So what does she have to say?
So you're basically there.
It
she's
was
saying,
brief. It's really short. You just go you
Yeah.
just go buy the stuff at a market, and then it's like, that's it.
That's basically it. And so
But
she's
the point
saying
is
that,
for these cutscenes.
she was hoping to have restocked some of her own supplies while she was here, but her vendor is like not there at the moment, and she's not going to pay
okay.
like the gouging prices of these other people.
Yeah.
And Clive says, "Well, I'll talk to Karen when we get back." And so she has like a almost like a flashback kind of moment where she says, "I came here with Sid once, shopping for supplies just like today, and just like today, I came away empty-handed. Sid said he'd speak with Karen for me when he got back. Has it really been 5 years? I remember it like it was yesterday. Hold on, does that mean it's been 5 years since we met? Like, feels a lot longer." And he says, "It does, in a good way, of course. Thank you, Tarja." "For what?" "For everything. I just want you to know that all you've done for us and all that you still do, it's appreciated." And she says, "Do you think I'd stick around if it wasn't?" But in the spirit of sharing and caring, I appreciate you too. By the way, all of us do. So just a nice moment where they share their appreciation for each other. I don't know, how does the Jill scene go in comparison?
The Jill scene, it was good, I thought. So Jill just talks about she talks about the food. She bought this bread. She bought a basket of bread while she was out. And she's like, oh, this bread's going to be so good. When we get back to the hideout, we should make some soup to go with it, and we can eat soup and bread just like old times, right? And Clive she's just kind of goes on for a paragraph or two, just talking about, and then we can do this and that. And she just seems to be excited about just being back with him in a time of relative peace compared to everything that's been going on. And is kind of falling back into a childish nature, right? And so she's like, oh, maybe we can go for a walk over here and do this and look at these things and eat this food. And she kind of, laughs at how silly she's being. But of course, Clive is just like, no, I mean, those times will come again. There will come a day where we can just have careless wants and just eat bread and drink soup and not worry about these things. But we're going to fight until that day comes, but it's going to come, right? So he's kind of giving her a promise that all these little things that you want to do are important and we're going to get to them.
I think I like that better than the Tarja scene. The Tarja scene is good just because I had never really had a real interaction with this character otherwise.
I know.
But I think I like Jill being inserted into that scene just to build more on the relationship they have and progress that a little further, which I think it needs.
Well, exactly. I think so. Yeah. I feel like more interaction between the two of them. I don't know where the story's going to go. I don't know how it's going to end. I don't know if they are going to end up, together in the end or not. But it's what I want to happen because they've both been through a lot, and it's obvious that they care for each other. And it's kind of awkward sometimes when Clive and Jill will have these interactions where, for instance, once we get back to the hideaway, Jill was not present at the Kupka fight, right? Because she had to rest, Tarja's orders. Well, once we get there, Jill then shows up and she's like, "Ooh, I'm all rested up, and you're not gonna go adventuring without me this time." Yeah. And Clive's like, "I wouldn't dream of it," right? Yep. Even though he just did it. We know what he means, right? Yeah. But the idea with that is that it's awkward because they're treating each other in such a platonic way. It's obvious that there is sexual tension and that they like each other. It has been alluded to in many scenes.
There's the scene where Gav interrupts the kiss.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so. Oh, yeah, that's right. I don't know if we talked about that. Yeah. But yeah. So it's clear that things are happening, right? Yet whenever they're talking, it's always like, oh, I really want you by my side because you're such a good fighter. And, oh, yeah, let's travel the world together. But we're not, gonna be committed to each other, And it's like there's something missing here, that Clive and Jill are trying to fit this, adventurous friendship role or relationship into what is clearly meant to be more than that.
Yeah. Right? And this is another thing that bothers me about the 5-year time skip, is the relationship between Jill and Clive seems to relatively be in almost exactly the same state as it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's true.
We haven't get
progressed
to see a progression of that. 5 years is a long freaking time.
Oh, totally. Especially because they hadn't destroyed another mother crystal in all that time.
Yeah.
You telling me there wasn't one time where they both just kind of spent a night together?
Yeah.
No, apparently not.
5 years is a really, really long time in the scale of a courtship or whatever.
Exactly. And according to where Gav kind of interrupts them when they're together, it seems, based on what they have presented, is that they haven't even had a first kiss
yet. Not
yet.
even, yeah.
That's
it's really hard to believe
because we can feel the sexual tension, and then later on it's like, oh, nothing's going on, but yet they're adventuring together all the time, and they wouldn't dream of being apart, but they aren't even taking these basic tiny steps to further the relationship. This is in stark contrast to something like Final Fantasy VIII, where the romance is just the highest priority, and all the other stuff, who cares? In this one, it's the opposite. It's like we're doing all of our responsibility work, and the romance can take a back seat. But knowing humans and how they are, it's not like every second of their life they're saving the world, right? There's downtime. There is downtime. We're experiencing it now. Yeah. it seems like either the characters themselves are just holding back. They're like, we don't deserve happiness together until the world is at peace, or something like that, right? Which is noble, I guess, although kind of not relevant. But I could see them being like that, right? Because they have this high important, job to do. Or I could see the narrative just kind of not giving this the attention that it deserves. And I don't know which of the two to side with at the moment. But it could be that the narrative just doesn't want to have much romance in it at all. But I want it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm wanting it. It's leaving me wanting.
We have Hat here saying 5 years ago this channel was called Dark Pixel Gaming. Just
Law can change.
going on how long a time 5 years really is, right?
And then Michael Pale says that she had not yet mentally healed. All the more reason for them to have people get clingy when they have problems.
To take solace in each other.
Exactly.
To support each other.
They need each other more, you know?
Right.
Well, that's not to say that's always what happens. That could very well be a good response.
Well, Mick says, if so, I think it would have been nice for her to state it out as a reason why she feels like she's not ready to begin a relationship.
Sure,
and then
and
Mike
maybe
says,
they do later.
But that would be good writing.
Hey, this game's writing is not that bad. I'm not going to be complaining about it that much.
It's just a funny joke.
But that is a funny joke.
Let's see here. Okay, so we've completed now all of the stuff Mid needed us to do to build.
So then we all
engine.
help build it. Then we get the blacksmith to come along. He's all upset because his elbow hurts and he's like not as strong as he used to be. We build out the whole thing and it's like, great, let's fly. Let's take to the skies. And she goes, cool. Now we just need 3 more just like it. And it's like, wait, are you kidding me? You mean that? Yeah. Well, the whole thing needs 4. It's going to have like 4 separate pieces to it. Right. So we don't, no airship.
But she's going to go build the rest in Canver with her people there. So she's heading back to Canver now.
That's right. And then on the way, they were going to stop by Sid's
the whole
memorial.
The whole thing was Otto had sent us to get Mid so that we could all go visit Sid's grave together. And
but
she
Mid
dodged
was working
that.
on a thing.
She dodged that by creating this need to build this engine that she's been working on. And now she's like, well, I just got to do one more thing real quick before we go. And then she just leaves.
She's gone.
So
no airship for a while now. Like the airship builder has left, and now I'm pretty deflated on the whole airship thing.
Totally avoiding going and visiting her father's grave at all. She's not ready to do that.
There's a trouble there. It's either that it's too much for her and she doesn't want to cry.
That's a sense.
Or that she didn't have a great relationship with him, given that we hadn't even heard of her. It could be either of those.
It could be either, or maybe a little bit of both.
That he was so concerned with saving the world that he didn't take care of his family.
It could be. I mean, we just literally just don't know at all.
No, we don't
because they don't say.
But it could be either. It could be for sentimental reasons, or it could be for she's got something she needs to get over.
He does have a line. Sid has a line earlier in the game where he says, "Would it bother?" or would it be? I can't remember exactly what he says. You don't know he's talking about her, but he mentions would it kill her to write or something like that once in a while, or he talks about someone biting the hand that feeds. And what he's referencing is Mid,
his daughter, who was probably like the teenager at the time.
Sure,
not stoked about Dad.
Sure, or she was in Canver studying at the time and was busy and living her life. And didn't, that's what kids do when they leave home and they go to college. They stop communicating.
They stop writing to their parents.
They're trying to figure things out kind of a thing. Anyway.
Yeah. So interesting. Okay, I missed that.
I think it could be a little bit of both. It could be one that she's not ready to really face it. She didn't have time to properly express how she feels to her dad.
So that could be her internal guilt then, that I never even wrote him a letter in like 2 years, and now he's dead and I can't talk to him now, and just regretting that.
I could see that.
Yeah, something similar happened to me when I was on my mission. I was in Pittsburgh, and this is when my grandmother had died, and I had neglected to write letters to people while I was out there, but I had written her a letter. I think like 2 weeks before she passed, and I remember as after I got the news, because I didn't know it was going to happen, I was very upset and sad, but I was like, at least I got to write her a letter, right? Because I had always heard, oh, Grandma would love to hear from you. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I was just happy that I was able to do that. And I would have felt tremendous guilt if I had not done that, especially hearing that she wanted to hear from me and then me just being like, I don't know. It's like I'm busy. I'm doing stuff. And I'm glad I don't have to carry that burden, But even if you did, that's not a burden that they would want you to carry.
Right.
But people can't help it. You always want, we make such a big deal as humans about last words. I never got to say goodbye. It doesn't matter that they knew how you felt and that what matters to humans is that the last interaction was a positive one.
Yeah.
I have a friend, his father died after they had a huge fight and then his father died. Yeah. And it was like, he will never get over that. But yeah, we make such a big deal about that. And there's something about that. There's something about leaving on a good note. Yeah. That is so important. And people often will say that too. It's like if you're ever upset at somebody, it's like, hey, if they got in a car accident tomorrow, would you be okay with yourself?
Would you still
and that's
feel this way?
And maybe it's a good thing. I'm kind of being a little critical of it, but maybe if you choose to live that way, every relationship you have, when you say goodbye to them, think that it's possible you may not see them again. Yeah. Maybe you'd be a better, you'd be a little more gracious to people, especially family and friends and stuff.
Definitely. So they go without her to Sid's grave. I liked this line that Clive says, if no one is listening, he's repeating something Sid had said to him in the past. If no one is listening to what you have to say, you might as well not say it. Just go do it, right? And that was in reference to none of these people, none of these rulers will listen to me about the mother crystals. So what's the point of even talking at this point? Let's just go destroy them.
That was kind of what Sid came to, right?
Yeah. So Clive tells the grave, Hugo Kupka is gone. His shadow looms over us no longer. Right. Gav says, it's a pity the Phoenix can't be in two places at once. If he had been with us, because Gav was at the hideout when it was attacked, if Joshua had not been with you guys, but then Clive wouldn't have survived. But anyway, maybe he could have done something for the lost. And this is where Clive says, not even the Phoenix can bring people back from the dead. I guess what he's saying is, too bad he couldn't be with you and with us at the same time, two places at once, right?
Sure.
We must live while we have the chance, and not as slaves to the crystals, but as free men. And so our mission remains unchanged. We cannot stop until every mother crystal is gone, and their thirst for ether with them. The only one that remains in Storm is Drake's tail in the crystalline dominion. So that's where they're going next. Karen basically says, take Goots with you.
Gertz. They all pronounce his name differently, I'd noticed.
Yeah, well,
I think Karen says Gertz.
He says, I think it's Goots, because Waloed is spelled with the O-E the same way. Waloed. And so this is Goots.
Okay. I just read the name Goethe. I just read that into it.
So he has one of these trader's passes. So basically, the Dalmecs, or is that what they're called, the Dalmecians? Yeah. They basically have been limiting trade heavily, particularly any trade that would benefit the Empire. So they only allow people with these traders' passes to go in between the Empire and Dalmecia. So Goots has one of these traders' passes.
That's
so
right,
go with him, and he'll get you into the crystalline dominion, basically. So that's what their next goal is, to head there. So they're going to go from the east of Dalmecia or Dalmec, or whatever the freaking nation is called, and they're going to go into the crystalline dominion.
Which
Tons of new quests open up now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about them necessarily, at least today. There was nothing that really stuck out to me as needing attention at this moment, unless you had any notes.
From those, no, and I wouldn't say that I've done all of them quite yet.
Okay. But I have done all of them, but.
Okay, I did want to take one more note about visiting Sid's memorial there. Yeah. And it's not like a grave spot, it's more just like a memorial, right? Yeah. There's kind of the sign. Would that be the sign of Rama? I don't really know, but it's like a tree. It's got this kind of upwards.
Oh, yeah. The sign that's on the rock there, yeah.
But they put a flower down, right? So Clive puts his flower down, And then is it Karen that shows up as well, and then she puts a flower down, or is it Jill? I can't remember who it was. Anyways, there were 2 flowers that got put down. And there's a scene here. There's two parts here that I thought were really good. The flowers, all of a sudden a gust of wind blows, and it blows the petals of the flowers up, and the camera kind of does this big move upwards as the petals kind of are whisked away up into the air, right? Yep. And this is as they're talking with Sid, right? It seems a bit odd in some ways, but it's actually, this is a common theme in mythology. So this is the reason that the Israelites would burn their sacrifices. It turns the sacrifice into something that goes upwards into the air, right? Okay. Up towards the sky. Yeah. So in this case, the flowers are the offering, right? Because they're, hey, we came to visit you. We brought you something, right? A flower. Boom, they put it down. It's like a flower in the midst of the blighted lands. A flower really stands out, right? It's the hope in the middle of the darkness, right? So they put that hope down into the darkness, and they put it down, right? And the flowers that are the offering, and then the petals being whisked up into the air by the wind towards the sky symbolize how their offering was accepted, right? That it's been accepted up by the heavens, right? So the spirit of Sid took them up into the heavens where he resides. At the very end of the scene, after Karen says a word or two to Sid, like speaking to herself, but talking like about Sid, like, oh man, I sure wish you were here. The camera kind of tilts up and just kind of shows the sky for a little bit, and that's how that scene kind of ends. Yeah. So that's what all of this means. That's what the symbolism of the petals being whisked up into the air means, that it's the offering is being accepted by the heavens, that there is a good force above them that is still actively participating in the world.
Sid's presence.
Yes, and his presence is part of that, and that spirit, the spirit of Sid.
Okay, so there's a very quick note I have here about there's these 2 soldiers, at least they claim to be, who were sent to recover this merchant's stolen cart by bandits nearby when you first reach Letney's Cleft.
Yeah.
You go and kill all them and recover the goods or whatever, and they're like, okay, thank you very much for that, and be on your way now. We'll handle this. It's like, well, how are you going to carry all this with a broken cart? Like, don't you worry about that. You can just F off down the road now. Like, I feel like this is a quest line that's beginning. We'll probably see these characters again, was my note. Okay. They're obviously suspicious. They're not who they're claiming to be. And they had us go murder all these people so that they could get their stuff. I feel like this is going to go somewhere. I feel like this is not the end of that particular thing. Because I think it's just a side quest. It's a green side quest along the way. But I have a feeling that's going to continue. But the really interesting part was when you reach what they call the final sin, which is that big, like,
the final
waterfall.
Sin. Yeah, Zemeckis. Yeah. Zemeckis, the land of the gods.
Yes.
And then the final sin. Now, after playing through this, do you know what the final sin is or was?
The final sin was the humans' attempt to challenge the gods.
Okay. Yeah. Because this is where this whole... Okay, I have a huge note here. I thought that it was the name of the chapter, and I was going to the end of the chapter to find out. But it was just the name of that scene.
It's the name of I think the waterfall itself.
The final sin?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Because this was like the location where this battle took place between the gods.
So this is where the Tower of Babel fell.
Yeah,
right?
Basically.
It's a very cool place. It's beautiful. So this is Sid talking. Long, long ago, man was overcome by avarice and challenged the gods in a bid to win their power. The final battle took place here at these falls, or so the legend goes. Then Jill says the gods emerged victorious and punished man for his defiance, but by visiting upon him 2 curses. And then Clive then speaks back up, dominance and bearers.
Yep.
It's very interesting that they give us this information now.
Or curses.
Right, later on.
Well,
dominance
earlier
and
in the
bearers.
game, you had basically interpreted Joshua's complaining about it not being fair, that only our family gets the Phoenix
it's the curse.
as a curse rather than as a boon that nobody else gets to have.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what essentially they're saying here.
That is.
The dominance and the bearers are the curses that were given in as a response to men having challenged the gods in this battle.
But the reason why it could be misread is for what Clive says right after this. He says, to tell the truth, I always thought it strange that the dominants and their icons were deemed a curse.
Yeah.
Back home, the dominant inherited the throne. They were admired and exalted, not spurned. Whenever I got to that part in the story, I assumed there must have been something I'd misunderstood. And then it talks about how Clive's favorite stories were the epic battles between gods and men. I thought that was very interesting. Like, oh my gosh, woo. I'd love to read some of those stories.
Yeah.
But, of course, we got Tower of Babel imagery here. Now, I don't know, is it Babel or Babel? I've heard it both ways. Babel for Babylon.
I'm not sure how they would have pronounced it in ancient times. But
nobody knows. But the common way people say it. I always grew up saying Tower of Babel.
I said Babel growing up. But
okay, it's probably Babel. I'll just
probably
say Babel.
because, if nothing else, for the dumb reason that Babel being related to speech and the languages being confused after
Tower
this.
of Babel.
Then everyone started babbling at each other.
I think Babylon means like the gates or something, like the gate of God.
Right.
But okay.
By the way, I know that what I just said is wrong. It's just how I thought about
that's
it
how you
as
remember
a
it.
7-year-old.
No, there's an app. There's a language learning app called Babel. And it's making a play on that exact pun you're talking about.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So the imagery here for Tower of Babel is there. Instead of a tower, it was likely these structures we heard mentioned earlier that blotted out the stars in the sky. I still have trouble visualizing what that was. Was it a Dyson sphere built around the Earth, right? Or was it like, I don't know. I just have trouble visualizing what it was. Was it just a tower, or did it literally cover the sky? I don't know.
Yeah.
But the punishment is very interesting. So in the Bible, you have the builders of the tower being scattered into the different nations and languages, right?
Yeah.
But there's something else to that, right? Each nation developed their own deities. They had their own gods, right? So for defiance to the one God, the people were then punished by now having to submit to the rule of many lesser gods. Each nation had their own deities. The people in Valisthea, now I'm leaving the Bible, now I'm moving back to Valisthea, they're being punished by being given these icons, right? As a curse, right? Now they have this weird mediator between like the heavens and them, and it's these dominants, it's the icons, it's these fallen gods that they have to deal with now, instead of like the higher, more transcendent spirits, right? So, these lower gods are a similar parallel to the 70 nations after the Tower of Babel. These lesser gods, these fallen principalities, are indicative of the Nephilim, which every other game we play, apparently.
Yes.
Right. I've neglected to bring it up until now.
People are bringing up a whole bunch of Xenogears images in the chat here. The Tower of Babel from Xenogears.
Of course. So every other game we play has some allusion to the Nephilim. It's amazing how that, like, it's like 2 verses in the Bible. In the beginning of Genesis, it says, like, there were giants in the land, right? And then it's like, people just can't, like, those verses stand out in the Bible more than amidst the sea of words and millions of words in the Bible. It's like those 2 verses, it's like 4 or 5 verses, are like so curious that people just explore them over and over in art and in different ways, right? It's just like, wow, the sons of God and the daughters of men have this unholy union that produces these giants, right? And that's essentially what happens here. So these fallen principalities that are essentially the icons, right? This curse from the heavens that descends down upon the people, and that becomes kind of part of the people themselves, right? So we've talked about this. Okay, so the angels, or the B'nai Elohim, are the sons of God, and they go down to the daughters of men and create these hideous giants. And we're going to call them icons. These things that are going to lead people towards destruction in a flood. Though in this story, it's not a rising tide, but the blight that is flooding their lands.
Yeah, right.
They need to sever this connection to these lesser gods and reestablish a connection to the ground of being, to the one transcendent ideal, unmediated, right, by these fallen principalities that they find themselves surrounded with. This makes the whole idea of destroying the crystals a lot more palatable to me when you link it up with these stories. And this is one of the criticisms I have early on. It's a criticism I have of Final Fantasy VI. It's like, they create this cool world of magic, and then the whole point in the world is to get rid of all the magic so that you can just live with your gunpowder and technology, and that's way better than like a world with magic, right? Yeah. And I'm always like, something just feels weird about it. But the idea that it's foreign magic, I keep bringing up the symbolism of the moon here, because the icons aren't God. They are merely like, they are godlike in a way. but they aren't God. Like like severing your connection to the icons and the dominants and the bearers and the crystals is not severing connection to what Meister Eckhart would call like the ground of being, right?
Yeah.
Like the actual like truth of the universe, whatever that is. It is instead, it's like getting rid of these foreign things that are kind of distracting humanity from what it otherwise could be, but not getting rid of magic itself, not getting rid of the enchantment itself per se, just getting rid of the fallen angels, the fallen principalities, the fallen versions of like religion and things that they're always portraying religion so poorly in Final Fantasy games. And that's at least in part because they're portraying a fallen principality. They're portraying something that has this ideal that it just can't meet the ideal, and it has fallen to the earth and has become kind of the opposite of what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that in getting rid of that, you can then reestablish a true connection with something that's true and transcendent, as opposed to, because there's obviously magic in this world. Like it's not like this would not be a meaningless a clump of atoms of billiard balls, in the world that was created by these developers, right?
Yeah.
That it's like, there is meaning to be had in the world. Otherwise, there wouldn't be, creating the world to tell this story. The story has meaning, right? And so it's a meaningful world, which means that there is meaning to be found. It's just, it's currently being obstructed by this like fallen principalities that are just screwing everything up and causing a flood to come and destroy everything. So that's what I can read from this whole thing, and I like it a lot. I like it a lot better.
Yeah. Well, it makes a lot of sense, and yeah, I mean, I actually like the connection you made there too, giving more of a justification to this idea of destroying the crystals.
Yeah.
When you see the icons and the bearers and the things as being a curse, crystals probably came with that. Because the thing I've been thinking about this whole time is we've destroyed almost all the crystals at this point.
Yeah, there's only a couple
but
left.
It doesn't seem to have done anything to reverse the blight.
You're right. You're right.
Like,
yeah.
it seems like the blight is still cruising on at the same speed as before, even though you have these giant...
Or even faster.
...batteries
that are no longer operable,
absorbing the ether.
So that either means the other ones are working overtime, or... that Sid was wrong.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Is like, is Sid? I mean, Sid had this assumption, and we've already gone destroying a bunch of crystals, and like it's not changing the result.
Yeah,
was he really
point.
correct? Is what I would be thinking if I were Clive.
You know what? This is like Ocarina of Time, where Link goes around, he gathers the three jewels, right? And then he shows up at the temple, and then Ganondorf is like, sweet, you did all the work for me. And then Ganondorf takes them all. Yeah. And it's like, we're doing this, we're destroying all the crystals, and Sid is like, yeah, we got to do it. And we're like, yeah, we're following Sid. And then we do it all. And it doesn't appear that Ultima is that upset that we're destroying crystals.
Right.
So we might be playing right into Ultima's hands by doing this.
But what you're saying is, which I think is right, that this curse of the bearers and the icons, the dominants, right, seems to all be tied in with this whole system that got created, and the crystals are a big part of that. The mother crystals are a big part of it too.
Yeah.
So it's all part of the same system that seems to have been some sort of curse given from the gods after, humankind defied them or whatever. So, I think there is something to that, so I like that reading.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where it goes.
Now, the next scene I'm going to save for next time, because we actually go back to
the Imperial Palace.
Imperial Palace. I'm going to save all of that for when we cover the Crystalline Dominion and the Bahamut fight.
Okay, good.
But I do want to just kind of quickly get through the rest of this part here in the desert.
Oh, I see.
Because there's not a lot here that I really have notes on. Basically, Goots' pocket gets picked by some kids.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, no, I don't have my pass. We can't get through. So you got to go do this whole investigation that leads you...
Talk to all these kids.
Yeah. With trade being so closely sort of watched by the Dhalmekian leadership, now those passes are really valuable. So there's a whole group of bandits that go around using kids to go pickpocket and steal these passes, which they then sell, for a ton of money so people can go across the border. So they're using these kids for this. You got to put an end to that and get the kids doing respectable work, which is shoveling chocobo pins.
Yes. And then they get paid half of what they were getting paid to pickpocket, but they're happy because they can still eat, I guess.
Anyway, you meet these two new characters, Eloise and Theodore, brother and sister, who kind of help you through that. I just don't have a ton of notes for this section. It's just kind of like, a wrench got thrown in the plan. We got to go figure this out so we can get across the border.
Yeah.
I don't really have much to say about it than that.
Yeah, I don't either. And then we go right back to the Imperial Court.
And then we go right back there for some more stuff.
Yeah, my notes are pretty sparse there.
Yeah, I'm going to...
Just that Gertz is great, though. I love Gertz.
Yeah,
Goots. I love Goots.
Well, he was stoked when he found out that Karen was going to send him with us to go buy some more tools or whatever.
He was like, really? I get to go? Oh, great. Yeah, he was so excited. I love how big he is, but he's got a high voice. It's just, I love that. It's fun.
He's the humble, or what do you call it, the gentle giant character.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And of course, the perfect target to be exploited by these pickpocket kids.
Exactly.
The gentle giant.
Okay, so we're going to save all of the Crystalline Dominion and Bahamut for next time. There's a lot to cover there. There's a lot of story, a lot of scenes with Dion and Alabella and Olivier and the Emperor, and another one with Joshua and Dion. There's just a lot going on there. So we will talk about that next time. Thanks for watching. Peace out.